Hey guys, welcome to the Eerie Side Podcast with your hosts, Sophia
D.
and Elena.
We appreciate you guys listening and hope you're ready to get on the Eerie side. Before we get into the show, we would appreciate it if you all could give the podcast a follow and make sure that bell notification is turned on so you'll be notified whenever we drop an episode. If you enjoy the show, we would love to have you leave us a review. And if there's a case suggestion or any feedback you'd like to share, feel free to send us a message in that text box below the episode. Please share the podcast with family, friends, coworkers, or really anyone you think will enjoy it. And please follow us on all the socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, you know the drill. All right, so the case I'm doing today was actually recommended to us by a listener. Shout out to Paulette, who tagged us on a TikTok video about this story. We appreciate you sharing this story with us because part of it is actually very time sensitive. So if there's ever a case any of you would like us to cover, please feel free to send that our way through social channels, or you can comment in the text box below this episode as well. And I'm going to ask you, I doubt either of you have heard of this case just because it's not as well known in the American true crime world right now, but have any of you heard of Kareem Salim?
No, not at all.
Okay, I will get into the TikTok video later in this story because in order for it to make sense, I think it's important we start with a man by the name of Kareem Salim. It's May of 2024, and Kareem is living in a gated community in New Cairo, Egypt. New Cairo is right next to Cairo, Egypt, which is the capital. Kareem actually holds citizenship in both the United States and in Egypt, and he's a graduate from American University in Cairo. At this point, Kareem also had a TikTok account by the name of Hooked on Phonics, and that's Phonix, and he had over 600,000 followers on TikTok. On TikTok, he would actually teach people English, which is not surprising because he was formerly an English teacher. He also had a YouTube channel called Speak Easy Hub. However, as of today, both Kareem's TikTok and YouTube accounts have been deleted. And that is because on May 25th, 2024, after failing to evade police by escaping his apartment, Kareem was arrested for sexually assaulting, torturing, and murdering 3 sex workers. The public prosecution have referred Kareem to the criminal court on charges of murder, drug possession, drug trafficking, and human trafficking. I unfortunately do not have the names of these women, but I do know they were killed on November 15th, 2023, April 8th, 2024, and May 15th, 2024. So that's not too far away, given that at least when we're recording this podcast, it's still in 2024. So all of this has happened in a very short time span and very close to where we are currently in the world, timeline-wise. One of the woman's bodies was recovered on a desert road to Ismailia, and then another of the woman's bodies was found in Port Said. Because both of these victims had similar injuries, police realized that they were both killed by the same person. Police ended up using surveillance cameras to solve the crimes, and this is how Kareem was linked to these murders. As if this wasn't horrifying enough, Kareem actually recorded what he did to these women. He recorded himself torturing them before they died. He recorded their actual deaths, and he recorded himself sexually abusing their bodies after death. One thing that helped Kareem with all of this is that he built a soundproof room in his apartment. So he definitely had plans with what he wanted to do with these women and wanted to make sure he could execute on them.
Wait, he built a soundproof room in an apartment?
Yep, that's correct. He really went full out on this horrendous scheme of his.
Yeah, that's crazy. Especially in an apartment of all places.
I know. I feel like that would be really hard to do.
Yeah, I
that.
would be shocked if it works.
He did not get away with this for long. But it seems like, I'm assuming the soundproof room worked very well because I don't think anyone heard it. So when Kareem met with these women, he would actually take them out on a date night during their first time meeting. I'm assuming this was done to try and build some trust with them so that he could get them to his apartment by the second date. Police conducted a drug test on Kareem and discovered traces of hashish, which is a compressed form of marijuana, tramadol, which is an opioid, and methamphetamine in Kareem's blood system. Kareem eventually confessed that he would pressure and coerce his victims to use the drugs with him. In addition, Kareem would oftentimes tie up his victims and then torture them. He was very sadistic, and he would watch several sexually sadistic videos, and sometimes while his victims were at his apartment, he would actually do this. After Kareem had murdered each woman and was finished with them, he would put their bodies in the trunk of his car and then dump them at a desolate place. When it comes to Kareem's trial, it began in June, but Kareem's initial lawyer ended up withdrawing from the case. Kareem did find another lawyer, and throughout the proceedings, he denied the charges against him and retracted the confessions he had made following his arrest. However, the prosecution presented overwhelming evidence against him, including videos that showed Kareem engaging in necrophilia with the victims' bodies after he murdered them.
Wow, that is disgusting. That's like a whole nother level of disgusting.
I think he has just a very dirty mind.
Yeah.
It's disgusting to imagine this, and I can't think of anything more incriminating than having him committing those acts on video. And of course, they also had the CCTV footage, which had captured Kareem disposing of the bodies too. So ultimately, in August of 2024, Kareem was found guilty of multiple counts of premeditated murder, sexual assault, necrophilia, and human trafficking. In September, he was sentenced to death by hanging, which he is able to appeal if he wants to. So from the time he was arrested, which was in May of 2024, to the time he was sentenced in September of 2024, that was only 4 months. So it definitely seems like the Egyptian court system moves much quicker than that of the United States. Kareem is now known by a few names, which is the New Cairo slaughterer, woman slaughterer, the New Cairo serial killer, Safa el-Tagamoa, and the Al-Tagamoa serial killer. I think Al-Tagamoa is a certain part of New Cairo. Originally, Kareem had said that there were more than 3 victims, but it's not really clear as to whether this is true or even if it's still being investigated.
I have a question. How old is Kareem?
37.
It seems unusual that at 37 he would start killing and not earlier, since he killed 3 so quickly, all within so many months.
That makes a very good point. I think there was a lot of pressure that was building up in his life and tension that led to this point, which we will discuss.
They do not think that he was killing before this point?
If they do, there's been no mention of it. And I could be wrong, but given how quickly they were able to find these murders, I would assume he would have been caught just because he did not seem to be doing a good job of covering his tracks. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe he's been doing this for a while and he just ended up getting sloppy, and so they just caught his most recent hypothetical murders. But he also recorded what he did to these women, so maybe that's just something he started doing, and if he had been committing previous murders, he didn't record them. But as of now, we don't know that he's committed any other murders. Kareem's story is currently big news in Egypt, and that's for obvious reasons. The international press has not given it nearly as much exposure as the Egyptian press, which is unfortunate because in reality, the American press should be giving this story more exposure for one big reason, and that is for Kareem's son, Zayn. In May of 2024, when Kareem had been arrested, he had only been living in Egypt for 4 years. Prior to this, He had been in London with his now ex-wife and son. So remember the TikTok video I had mentioned earlier that Paulette shared with us? Well, that was my first exposure to this case. Now, in this TikTok video, a woman by the name of Lobna Yakut is speaking, and Lobna is Kareem's ex-wife. I want to give some information about Lobna and her backstory, and I will say that the information I'm including, I found and verified through external news sources, and Lobna actually reiterates some of this information in the TikTok video that Paulette shared with me and in other videos she's posted on her TikTok. Kareem and Lobna got married in 2014 and lived in Egypt with their son Zayn Salim until their separation in 2020. Lobna is now 33 and has been living in the UK since 2022 after escaping Cairo, which is where she lived with Kareem, who's not her ex-husband. Lobna was not surprised to hear of the crimes Kareem had committed because she has alleged that Kareem was very abusive to her during their marriage. At the time that they separated in 2020, Egypt did not have laws against domestic violence, so she could never press any charges, but she did say that he had allegedly almost killed her multiple times. In 2020, Lobna left with her then 5-year-old Zayn and moved into a new home in Cairo. Within a year, she alleges that Kareem began threatening her and her family. In 2021, following what was supposed to be a temporary meeting between Kareem and his son Zayn, Lobna claims that Zayn was not returned to her and that she hasn't seen Zayn since then. When remembering the last time she saw Zayn before handing him off to Kareem, Lobna says she told her son, "If you're taken from me, find me." She said that was the last thing she said to him. Then, a year later, Lobna said she was forced to flee Cairo amid a series of threats from Kareem, both to her and her family. On one occasion, she alleges Kareem waited outside her Cairo residence for 4 days with a knife, which prompted her to escape the residence in disguise and flee to the UK. Then, in May of 2024, when Egyptian investigators called her and told her what Kareem had done, which is murdering these 3 women, this is what she had to say about it. She said, "I didn't believe it. I thought he set it up because he just did everything to find me. So I'd get to Egypt and he'd get me." But once Lobna saw what the Egyptian investigators had mentioned in the Egyptian media, she realized it was real and was not surprised that Kareem was in the center of all of this. So at first she thought this was just a ploy for Kareem to get her, like Kareem was behind this to get her to come back to Egypt, but it actually, wasn't. She said, "Me and my mom, we were shaken. It was madness." So even though Kareem is behind bars, Lobna's journey is not over. She is desperately searching for Zayn, who was reportedly handed to Kareem's mother following his arrest. Lobna says she hasn't received any assistance from authorities to help find Zayn, who was born in Michigan, where many of Kareem's family members live. Lobna hasn't seen Zayn in more than 3 years, but she still is searching for him endlessly. As soon as he is back with her, Lobna says she plans to take him to the beach for some Mom Zayn time. She said the beach was their thing and that they love it. Lobna said one of her last memories with Zayn was about a week before she last saw him. Zayn had asked her for balloons, so she bought them. Then the two of them walked around a shopping center and Zayn high-fived strangers and gave them balloons, which I think is just super cute of him to do. Lobna said it was all his idea and that he loves to make friends and loves to be social. I don't know, Zayn just seems like such a sweet boy, like finding joy in balloons and then handing them out to strangers and making friends. It's just such a sweet thing for him to do.
Yeah.
So Zayn was 6 when he was taken from her, and now he is 10. Lobna alleges that because of her ex-mother-in-law's wealth and connections, that it's been difficult to find Zayn. She has set up a GoFundMe, which we're including in the episode's information section, so that it can help cover her legal costs, investigative expenses, and the immediate needs of her ongoing fight for justice and reunification. In one of her TikTok videos, Lobna claims that when Kareem got locked up, he told the police she was dead. So his mom took her son, and she hasn't heard anything since. She claims that she found all police papers and has full custody, but that she cannot find Kareem's mom. She doesn't know if Kareem's mom is in Egypt or the United States, which is why she's trying to get as much exposure as possible, especially to people in the United States, because Americans are not very familiar with this story. So let's all be on the lookout for Zayn. The most likely places he will be are in Egypt or the United States, especially in Michigan. If you have any information, please contact Lobna through her TikTok account, which is called When Boredom Struck. And also, please contact your local authorities too if you have any information. Lubna's TikTok account is dedicated with videos about getting her son back. And on her TikTok account, When Boredom Struck, there's pictures of Zayn, and on our socials, we will also be including pictures of Zayn in case you want to look at that and just be aware of what Zayn looks like. So it seems like Kareem, based on what Lobna has allegedly said, Kareem took Zayn during what was supposed to be a temporary meeting, and then he's had him since then, which was in 2021. And then when he got arrested, Zayn went to his mom, Kareem's mom, and so now Lobna is just really trying to get him back home.
That's really sad. Do you know why she can't go to the police and say that her child was kidnapped? Because Zayn's mom had legal custody of Zayn. Can't she go to the police and report her kid kidnapped? Because that's technically what it is at that point.
So I'm not 100% sure, but she claims that she's just not able to find Zayn or his grandmother, which is Kareem's mom. And so without being able to find them, she says she can't really get them back. I don't know all the details and the specifics of it, especially Egyptian law. And if he's not in Egypt, then he's in the US, and that makes things a little bit more difficult because he was born here too. And she is not a US citizen, from what I understand, if I'm correct. So,
okay.
But also, I don't know how much agency, and I don't know if control is the right word, but maybe like freedom she had in regards to this, because she couldn't even file for domestic violence charges when she was getting attacked by Kareem. So I don't know, even though she was his mother and had so what she claims is a legal right to him, I don't know she had as much sway over it, given that it's just like a different country, different culture and laws and all of that.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah.
And she also claims that Kareem's mom has connections and wealth, which is making this very difficult.
Right.
The Middle East has different ways of interpreting parents' rights, moms and dads' rights. If you compare it to the way we think about it here in the U.S. So if she eventually did get the right to her son, then does any police force or any of those agencies help her? Because they're very male dominant. So I'm not sure they would help her.
True, without a husband to back her up.
Correct. She's in Egypt at the moment, correct?
I'm not 100% sure, because I know she went back to London because Kareem was constantly threatening her. She actually had to leave with just, I think, one suitcase, and that was it. She was in survival mode at that point. So I don't know if she's been back to Egypt since. I think she may have, because he's been arrested, but I'm not 100% certain. And obviously this made it harder for her to get him because Kareem was constantly threatening her, and that she was forced to move back to London.
Okay, so if she's in London, she will have to hire attorneys and agents and
yeah, that's what the GoFundMe is for.
Investigators to find him, and then to have to work with the police force or an agency to be able to go in and get him. And sometimes it works, and sometimes the agencies don't care and don't want to help because it's very male dominant. So they rather have his mom have him than her, even if she has rights. In the United States, it may be easier for her because he's an American citizen and she is his mom. And if she can show papers from Egypt that she has the right to have him, it'd probably be easier. But probably her biggest problem is to find them and to be able to get him before they move on.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's because she doesn't know where he is. That's the difficult part. And my impression, just from what I do know, it's so sad because, like you said, it seems like she may not be receiving as much help, if just based on what I do know. And it's sad to think that she is doing so much of this legwork on her own and is leading this. And I don't think she has the support that she needs.
Yeah, unfortunately. But hopefully this GoFundMe will be able to raise money for her to get like the lawyers and all the people that she needs to properly handle this. And hopefully if there's any of the listeners that can spare something to help this mother. But I'm glad one of our listeners suggested this. This is an interesting case.
Yes. Now that Kareem's behind bars, maybe it's going to start something that it'll help her eventually get Zayn, because it may have been harder for her to ever get Zayn if Kareem was still in the picture. I do know we mentioned, was Kareem ever committing murders beforehand? And it's interesting because I don't know, going back to that point, I don't know if there was a specific catalyst that happened at the end of 2023 that made him start killing, because I know he was going through all of this, the divorce with Lobna, and then he got hold of Zayn. But it was a few years from when that all happened to when he started murdering.
Yeah, especially 3 people in 1 year. That's crazy too.
Yeah, it was actually 3 people in the span of 6 months, which is
even like shorter than a year.
Yeah.
And the first time that he killed people was like all in 6 months is crazy.
Yeah, there was some rage going on there, if you ask me.
Something snapped. It's unfortunate that Zayn's missing, but I hope that his mother can get answers soon.
It seems like they were in the United States. Were there any unsolved?
Who was in the United States?
Kareem and his wife and Zayn, correct? They were in the United States at some point.
Oh, yes, because Zayn was born here.
Yes.
I do think they spent a good chunk of their life in London, though.
So it seems like they lived in London, the United States for a while. Are there any unsolved murders that occurred around the time Kareem lived in London, the United States, that maybe he did it, that he was a part of?
That's definitely a really good point that you bring up, because they were definitely here when Zayn was born, and then they spent a good amount of time in London before moving to Egypt. And I have no idea at all if there are any similar murders, or even if investigators are looking into these in both the US or London.
The situation is, I don't see what the breaking point was, because everything was working his way. He got a divorce. He got his son. What was it that would have triggered him to start killing at this point?
That's a good point, because I heard he had a nice apartment in an upscale community. It was actually a gated community. Some sources said he had a luxurious car. Not that having nice things is the end all be all, or doesn't mean that you're not gonna have stress. But you're right. From the outside, it looks like he has what he wants. Like, he's doing well financially. He's doing well on TikTok and YouTube. He's divorced and he has his son. I don't know what was the actual ticking point.
Did he think that his wife was going to get custody of his son? Like, was that a possibility? Or was she fighting for it?
I think she's always been fighting for it, but I haven't heard that there was any specific course of action or any specific thing that made it clear that she was going to be getting any sort of custody soon.
Does she have legal custody? Is she legally allowed to have him now?
According to her, yes, she has legal papers and
when
all of
did that occur?
I'm not exactly.
Did that occur before he started killing or after he was caught?
That's a good point, but I don't think she says it exactly, but she does make it sound like she went through all the paperwork to make it like 100% certain that he was hers to rightfully have. And I don't know if she did that after he was arrested or before, but I do know, according to her, been very thorough to get the paperwork in top-notch order.
But I thought the mother-in-law did something to get legal custody of him, the son.
No, the mother-in-law does not have legal custody. What happened is Kareem, when he was arrested, he told them that the boy's mom, Lobna, was dead, which obviously isn't true. And so then Zayn was given to Kareem's mom.
Oh, but there's no like legal documents that are like making her his guardian or anything like that.
No, nothing. Lobna doesn't say there's anything of that. And also the news sources that I found have never mentioned anything about that being the case.
Interesting. I don't know how Egypt works, but in theory, she should be able to go into police stations. This is my son. He's been kidnapped by this woman. She doesn't have a right to have him. I legally do. Find her, or at least find him. It's interesting that it seems like that they're not willing to investigate, or they can't. Like, she's just gone.
She may be gone.
True. Which would open a whole nother issue in trying to find someone.
That's when you have to hire a private investigator. But private investigators are very expensive.
It's just a shame that even tragic happens, it's easier for people to get answers if they have more money, which is unfair.
She needs an international private investigator who knows the culture of Egypt, London, United States, so that he or she will know how to handle it.
Right.
And that would be a very expensive individual. And the family has money. You can find someone, go get the police, and by the time they go, they could have been gone too.
Right. You have a private jet and just dip.
The hard thing is, I don't think she knows where they are. And I'm hoping that if she did, if they were in Egypt, that the Egyptian police would be able to pick Zayn and give them to Lubna. But I also don't know what that would even look like, if it would be an easy process for them. Even if she says to the police, he's been kidnapped, please find them. I don't know what kind of search efforts they are doing to find Zayn.
Since he is an American citizen, can't she tell the State Department that he's been kidnapped?
I would assume so, and I would think so. I'm not sure if she has done that already. It sounds like she's the one leading all the efforts to find him, and I do know she's taking people's advice from TikTok. So anyone who messages her, she writes down those notes and she follows through with them, because she's just trying to do everything she can to get her son back. So I would assume it'd be easier for her to catch him if he was in the US, if he's going to school and he's using his name and they're not trying to hide. But I don't know, maybe they're giving him a disguise. I don't know.
They could have him under a different name and disguise and everything.
But what's interesting also, and you could still brainwash a child, is she told him to contact me. So I also wonder how much agency he has, or if he's been threatened at all.
Yeah, that's true.
Because even if he's going to an American school and he wants to say something to his teacher, he may be scared of what happens if they tell his grandmother, hey, you said this to us at school today. What do you have to say about that?
So many kids don't tell people when their own parents are abusive, like teachers. So I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't want to tell his teacher, hey, I've been kidnapped by my grandmother and she moved me to a different country and I'm under a different name. Like, that definitely could be something very difficult to say. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is like scared to speak up.
Yeah, I just hope that, I'm going to say when, because I'm trying to manifest it for Lobna, like when he is reunited, that he still remembers Lobna, remembers all the good times, and has at least hopefully not been brainwashed.
That's true, because he was young.
6.
Yeah.
He sounds like such a great, nice boy, too. So I think he has that going for him. I hope that character of his would be able to stick through whatever he's going through right now.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any other information about the case?
I don't have any other information, but definitely check out Lobna's TikTok account, When Boredom Struck. And lastly, if you are experiencing domestic violence, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or go to thehotline.org. All calls are toll-free and confidential. The hotline is available 24/7 in more than 170 languages. And I will also be including the GoFundMe in the notes section below this episode. I want to thank you all for listening to us this week. We love our listeners, and because of you, we do this podcast. Your help and engagement really helps the podcast grow. So if you enjoyed this episode, please text a friend and family member to listen to our podcast. Until next time, make sure you stay on the airy side. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
And be safe.